Hello, viewer. Welcome to R with Oliver, episode 1. My name is Oliver, and let's talk about R. In this episode, I wanted to go over basic R usage, creating variables, manipulating variables, creating vectors, assigning vectors to variables, a small introduction to functions, and also, most importantly, where to get help with functions. So the first thing you want to do is download R. You can find it at this URL, r-project.org. Go ahead and select your operating system, and then all you need to get is base. This other stuff is for essentially diagnostic tools and creating packages and stuff like that. So go ahead and download and install base. And then R comes with its own integrated development environment, or IDE, or basically program to code R in. But it's pretty basic and not so great, and R Studio is much preferred. So the next thing I would do is go over to R Studio's website here at this URL and download R Studio. It's completely free and super awesome. So go ahead and select your operating system, download and install that, and just do that after you've already downloaded and installed R. So cool. Do those two things, and then let's go ahead and open R Studio. So yeah, this is what R Studio looks like. I believe it's white by default, but I have a dark theme on. Um, and so it's a series of windows or panes that can be manipulated. You can move them left and right, up and down. And you have four groups essentially. So in the top left, you have your text editor, script editor, where you type here, text goes here. In the top right, you have your environment, history, and connections. Environment is essentially where you'll see variables. History is the history of what you've put into the console down here. So let's put a 1 plus 1. We get 2 in the console, and you'll see 1 plus 1 in our history. Connections are connections of databases. And here in the bottom right group, we have files. This is your computer hierarchy file structure. You'll see plots we've created, packages we have installed, help documentation, and a viewer for different things, which we'll go over in another video. And then in the bottom left, we have the console, which we've already put 1 plus 1 into, and this is the R console. And then on the other tab, we have the terminal, which is your computer's terminal. And so in the console, this is a read, evaluate, print loop, or REPL, REPL. And essentially, it's the blinking cursor saying, hey, give me a command, and I'll tell you what I think about it. So we gave it 1 plus 1, and it said, I think 2. And now let's give it, 2 plus 3. It gives back 5. And so this is a way to interact with R in a quick and dirty way, kind of slicing, dicing data and seeing what we like. And then once we find the command we like, I can copy this, and then I would save it up here in the text editor. So see right there. And then I can go ahead and send this command down here to the console. If I want to run it again, I hold Control Enter. I hold Control and then press Enter. Or on a Mac, it's a Command and then Enter. And it sends it to the console. And there we go. You can see it's duplicated right there. And so the first thing I would do when opening up R Studio is I would navigate up here to the tools, and then down here to global options. It's similar on a Mac. Essentially, you just want to open this options dialog. And I would go through all these options, and I would just kind of mess with and tweak with what you know. So for me, I go down to code and then over to display, and I have all of these selected. I want to see, all the different types of characters and everything. I don't want to be, fooled about anything about what's there. And then I would go down to appearance. I would customize all this. Make sure you really like what you're looking at. Definitely do a dark theme. Definitely better than the lighter themes. I prefer the Tomorrow Night Bright. I think it's the best. It objectively is the best. Down here in pane layout, I think this is the default setup. I actually swap these. I prefer my console and my source to be on two separate sides, because these are what you work with most often. You do your quick and dirty in the source or in the console, and then basically save everything in the text editor. And the other ones, the environment, history, and connections, and then the files and the plots and all that, these are kind of just used as supplementary help when you need them, and they can kind of be pushed out of the way. So let's go ahead and apply that. So by push out of the way, I mean we can minimize the environment. We don't need to see that. We don't have any variables yet. And we don't really need to see our files either. So now this is perfect. This is exactly what we want. We can have our console over here on the right and our text editor on the left, and maximize our screen real estate. Super cool. So let's go ahead and make some variables. So let's make our first variable. Let's call it x, and let's give it the value of 5. So you see over here in the console, we put in the command, and if we double click down here and open up this, you'll notice in our environment we have a variable x, and it has the value 5. Let's go ahead and make a second variable. Let's call it y, and let's give it the value of 2. Let's go ahead and send this command to the console. You'll see it over here. And if you look in the environment, we have a second variable y with the value 2. So if you notice, for x, I use the assignment operator less than dash, which is the standard assignment operator in R. It's the one you'll see most often in people's code. It's the one you'll see in official documentation, and it's also the one I prefer to use. You can use the equals sign. That's totally fine. That's what you'll see most often in other programming languages. They both work fine, so just use whichever one you prefer. Let's go ahead and make a third variable. Let's call it z. And if you notice right here, I'm referencing other variables. Let's go ahead and send this to the console, and no worries, z is created, and it has the value 7. And so the reason this works is because x and y are in our environment. This is kind of crucial. So if we tried to create z, I'm over here in the console. I'm going to throw an error just as an example. If we tried to create z as, say, x plus a, but we forgot to create a, we never made a, and we tried to run this, R will throw an error saying, you know what, I can't find that object, error a not found. Real quick, if we just said, you know, a equals 5, boom, now a is there. Hit the up arrow twice, hit that command again, there. Now we just rewrote z. Now z is 10. Okay? And just to really put it home, here's the x plus y definition of z. Let's go ahead and rerun that, and now we redefine z again to 7. Okay. One thing to note, these variables don't need to be single letters. So for example, we can just do my underscore variable and assign that, you know, whatever we want. 15 plus 2 plus z. And that is 24. No issues with that. Let's go ahead and make a vector. Let's call it my underscore vector. And let's give it the values of 1, 2, and 3. Let's go ahead and execute this command. You'll see we have a variable called my vector with the values 1, 2, and 3. And if you'll notice, I used the C function to create a vector. The way you use functions in R is you give the function name, and then you give each argument inside of parentheses. So in this case, I used the C function, and I gave it the arguments 1, 2, and 3. And C stands for combine. So it's essentially like, take these elements and combine them into a vector for me. And if you're ever curious about what a function does, or you want to read more about it, you can go over to the console, put a question mark, and give the name of the function. Hit enter, and up will pop the help documentation where you can read all about that function. It's generally very detailed, so sometimes it's a bit hard to read, but there's a ton of great information here, and you can generally find what you're looking for. And at the bottom, there's usually examples of how the function's used. Very, very useful. Use it all the time. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of vector manipulation. So let's go ahead and add something to every element in the vector. Let's go ahead and do my vector plus y. So what should we expect? We know y is 2. So it's going to take 2 and add that to each element of my vector. So it's going to be 1 plus 2, 2 plus 2, and 3 plus 2. Let's go ahead and run that. And as we can see in the console, we get 3, 4, 5. Exactly what we expected. And just one thing I want to note. Notice how the result of this command, my vector plus y, is being sent to the console. 3, 4, 5. See, it's over here. So if you notice, line 10 is the only line without an assignment operator. Keep in mind the two assignment operators in R are less than dash and equals. Okay, and on every line we've executed so far, we have had an assignment operator. So that means that whatever was executed was assigned to a variable and stored in our environment. In the case of line 10, when we did my vector plus y, it added the value of y, which is 2, to every value in my vector, but the resulting vector, 3, 4, 5, was sent to the console. It was not saved as a variable. So if we wanted to do that, we would need to give it a name, such as ABC, and assign it. And there we go. And you notice that the result is not spit out into the console, but rather saved inside the variable. Super cool. So I think this covers everything I wanted to cover in the first video. This has been R with Oliver, episode 1. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.